This documentary portrays the case of a failed transition. Its subject is the newly independent country of Slovenia, and its protagonist is one of the most important political figures in the history of independent Slovenia, Janez Janša. Despite his vast efforts and Slovenia's membership of the EU, the young nation has not yet fully shifted from the darker era of communism into the light of democracy. True stories of charges against Janez Janša, each involving phantom accusations and questionable practices, offer a lens through which to examine contemporary Slovenian history and its present critical situation. Members of the old guard have worn the masks of democracy since independence of 1991, but have kept strong ties to the former regime in order to retain their rule of the political, economic, judicial and media spheres. In 2011, the world rose in protest against the highly questionable charges through which the Ukrainian Prime Minister, Yulia Tymoshenko, was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Regarding her suspect conviction, the European Union has repeatedly called for her release and issued a statement that her imprisonment is an example of justice being applied selectively under political motivation. In April 2013, the European Court of Human Rights stated that the case against her had been politically motivated and that her rights had been violated. The fight for her freedom continues to this day with significant international support while the Ukraine seeks to join the EU and struggles to achieve a true democracy.
Тому проблема Тимошенко – це не проблема однієї людини, це проблема критичної ситуації в суспільстві, коли при владі знаходяться комуністи, бандити, олігархи, які хочуть зробити все можливе для того, щоб в країні зберігся той стан, який є. А Тимошенко діє в протилежному напрямку, і через те і відбувається цей конфлікт.
The case of Yulia Tymoshenko is a scandal that has captured the world's attention. But few realize that a sadly similar case has been playing out in one of the smallest countries that is already a member of the EU, Slovenia. The country has been independent and ostensibly democratic for 22 years. It concerns the questionable conviction that took place in June 2013 of another former prime minister. Another case of the abuse of judiciary system to disable a political rival. Nestled between the Julian Alps and the Adriatic Sea, the Republic of Slovenia has often been called a hidden gem. With an astonishing diversity of natural wonders, from karstic cave systems to soaring snowbound mountains, from cliff-top castles to fashionable cafes, Slovenia is all of Europe in miniature. It was the first ex-Yugoslav nation to achieve independence in 1991, fortunate to break free with a minimum of violence over the course of a 10-day war. On June 25, 1991, Slovenia officially seceded from Yugoslavia, finally achieving its own independent status. 88.5% of Slovenes voted for independence, clearly demonstrating their dissatisfaction and disillusionment with Yugoslavian communism. It was the moment of greatest unity for the Slovenian nation. And it was also the period of democratic revolution throughout the world, launched by the end of the Cold War and the fall of Berlin Wall, both of which influenced the modern history of Yugoslavia.
І, скажімо, вже 22 роки незалежності України. Да? Практично те ж саме відбувається і тут, в Словенії. Ну, близько до того ж самого часу. І реально, от ті люди, хто були за радянських часів, з часів Соціалістичної Федеративної Республіки Югославія, да, на дуже високих відповідальних посадах, і хто творив весь той безпреділ, котрий був, з котрим весь народ боровся, коли виборювали свою незалежність, вони боролись в першу чергу проти того режиму, котрий був і існував. І здавалось би, що люди перемогли. Але от ці люди так змогли все зробити, що от та комуністична, олігархічна, бандитська влада, вона лишилася і сьогодні при владі. Вони поміняли назви, вони поміняли якусь атрибутику, але в душі вони лишились тими ж самими. І вони сьогодні, куди не глянеш, да, юридичний там, Верховний суд вони, прокуратура вони, правоохоронні органи вони, освіта вони. І от це все, коли потім дивишся на якість життя, то реально розумієш, що без нормальної ілюстрації просто не можна.
There are several parallels we could draw between Ukraine and Slovenia, but this story will portray facts through which you will be able to understand how communist elites still hold key political positions in Slovenia, wearing a mask of democracy, and how Janez Janša has been fighting them for almost 3 decades. One of the key political figures groomed in the past regime is Milan Kučan. In Yugoslavia, he was a member of Yugoslav top communist leadership and the last president of the Communist Party in Slovenia, despite the fact he became the first president of the independent Slovenia. He kept the position for 15 years and supported the old elites to stay in power. Before 1991, he was a public opponent of democratization and tendencies towards independence. In April 1988, during a meeting with his chiefs of national secret police, he criticized the democratic movements and exposed Janez Janša as the problem for the future of the socialist Yugoslavia. Slovenia was the first former Yugoslav nation to join NATO and the EU, and the first to show enough economic stability to join the Eurozone. At the beginning, it was in many ways the exemplar of how to turn a socialist nation led by the communist regime into a democratic one. But despite its prominence within the EU and its idyllic fairy tale appearance, something went very wrong in the transition from a central communist regime to democracy. Stéphane Courtois, an internationally renowned historian of communist regimes. I've known Boštjan Marko Turk for more than a decade, and I greatly appreciate his work, considering it well-informed, competent and objective. He is a brave observer and analyst. In his latest book, he dares to say aloud what many think quietly, that the persistence of the old nomenclature that should have disappeared when Slovenia became independent and entered the EU and democratic world is intolerable in Slovenian society and politics.
Partijska država, o kateri ste govorili, je bila utemeljena na 4 monopolih. Prvi monopol je bil monopol v gospodarstvu, potem je bil monopol v sodstvu, potem je bil monopol seveda medijskega prostora in politično-parlamentarni monopol. Se pravi, kar se je v centralnem komiteju odločilo, to je šlo potem v tako imenovano skupščino, kjer se je to seveda samo avtomatično sprejelo, a ne, in avtomatično so tudi ta oblast je tudi avtomatično dobivala, bi rekel, politično potrditev na tako imenovanih potrditvah, kjer so ljudje lahko zgolj obkrožili ali pa ne obkrožili, pa popolnoma vse kandidate, ki jih je že naprej postavila partija. Torej, v Sloveniji je obstal gospodarski monopol in to je napravilo eno strahotno škodo. Obstal je monopol v medijih, temu smo priča dnevno, in obstal je monopol v sodstvu. To je zgodba s Patrijo, zgodba, ki jo videvamo tudi dnevno. Edini monopol, ki je bil vsaj navidezno razbit, ali pa se recimo leta 90 zdelo, da je razbit, je bil politično-parlamentarni monopol. Če bi bil ta v resnici razbit in če bi Slovenija šla naprej po poti tranzicije in demokracije, potem bi se tudi prvi 3 monopoli razgradili. To bi moralo se zgoditi v začetku 90-ih let, ampak se ni.
In the year before Slovenia's independence, all democratic forces within the country united to form a coalition called Demos, which narrowly won the first parliamentary elections. But just 2 months after the diplomatic recognition of Slovenia, the communists fully returned to power. The democratic coalition Demos fell apart.
Hrvati bi imeli popolnoma demokratičen sistem, torej demokratične volitve. Mi smo imeli v parlamentu takratnem, ki se mu je rekla Skupščina Republike Slovenije, še tretji zbor, ki je bil zbor Združenega dela, ker ni imelo tiste volitve znotraj gospodarskega sektorja, niso imeli nobene veze z političnimi demokratičnimi volitvami, ampak vendarle. V tem zboru je stara nomenklatura ohranila kar precej pozicij in mnogokrat je imel Demos kar težave z oblikovati večino. Bilo je vsega 6 glasov več, 6 glasov prednosti in praktično pri vsaki pomembni zakonodaji, ki jih je sprejemal, tudi recimo osamosvojitveno zakonodajo, recimo nekatere obrambni zakonodajni akti so šli skozi za 1, 2, 3 glasove. Ne? Torej zelo tesno. In če se Slovenija ne bi sprejela te zakonodaje, bi se težko obranila kasneje, ko je bila agresija jugoslovanske armade na Slovenijo. Ne? Tako da Demos torej je zagotovo ključni akter in osamosvajanja in demokratizacije Slovenije. Brez njega bi ne bilo demokratične Slovenije, predvsem pa ne bi bilo samostojnosti države. Ne?
Jugoslavija ni več. Gre za Slovenijo.
No in takrat se je začelo. Začeli so se notranji špetiri znotraj Demosovih strank, tudi med uglednimi posameznimi politiki. Kaj je bil razlog k temu? Jaz mislim, da je stara nomenklatura, ki je vendarle ohranjala svojo veliko moč, imela ne nazadnje tudi veliko, ne samo upravno, sodno, ne, ampak tudi veliko ekonomsko moč in pa medijsko moč, da je začela poskušati razbijati Demos na njegovih najbolj šibkih točkah. In to so bili takratni demokrati in to so uspešno tudi upravljali. Tako da so pripeljali zadevo do tega, da enostavno Pučnik ni uspel več držati Demosa skupaj, vse te različne stranke.
The question is how many of them, these members of the old nomenclature, members of the communist regime, still hold on to past allegiances while wearing a mask of new democratic independence, and how many of them have made a transition.
Obstaja en stavek, s katerim se veliko stvari pojasni. In ta stavek je, da je Demos novo državo položil v naročje starih političnih sil.
Slovenija je šla skozi trojno tranzicijo od nekdanje skupne države v samostojno državo, ta del je uspel, tranzicijo iz nekdanjega socialističnega ali komunističnega režima v demokratični. Ta del je le deloma uspel, ker Slovenija še danes vedno ni popolna demokracija, in pa tranzicijo iz nekdanjega socialističnega v tržno gospodarstvo, kjer smo pa bili relativno manj uspešni kot nekatere druge države. Tako da lahko pravzaprav rečemo, da tranzicija v Sloveniji še vedno ni zaključena.
The bad economic state and lack of system reform is just a consequence of keeping the old communist networks in place. Public elections aside, the internal nomination of ministers, judges and other similar positions of power still often go to the members of the old guard, including some people with questionable histories and with personal vendettas that are still played out at the highest possible level and right under the noses of the democratic European Union. Another such example, important for this case, is that of Branko Masleša. He is a well-known judge who imposed the last death penalty in the former Yugoslavia. As a judge, he worked for the secret political police, UDBA, and was a member of a special secret commission that approved and somewhat legalized the killing of civilians. They were shot in the back when trying to illegally cross the former border between Yugoslavia and Italy. Procedures at the border were the same as at the Berlin Wall, and were imposed in Slovenia for 2 more years after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. In 2010, he was named the President of the Supreme Court of Slovenia. During the pre-electoral procedure, his former collaborators publicly spoke about his past, but a socialist majority elected him anyway.
Mi niti nismo zamenjali tajne službe korenito.
Za razliko seveda od večine baltskih držav, pa tudi večine držav bivšega sovjetskega bloka ali Varšavskega pakta, kakorkoli ga imenujemo, je Slovenija ena redkih držav, ki ni naredila celovite reforme obveščevalno-varnostnega sistema po prvi demokratičnih volitvah.
In communist Yugoslavia, personal success and advantage was largely achieved through nepotistic relationships among members of the Communist Party. Generations of this behavior are difficult to unlearn, which is why most Slovenes assume that politicians are still corrupt and trading favors. The communists have always wanted to build their own religion, a cult in which everything from the past is erased so that something new can be built. In the name of this new religion, 500,000 people were killed after World War II in Yugoslavia, 200,000 in Slovenia alone.
Temeljna zgodba je zgodba o Hudi jami, to je prizorišču neverjetnega zločina, za kar so zazidali za 11 zidov te nesrečnike. Da so umrli v bistvu ne pobiti, ampak jih je večina umrla zadušena od lakot od žeje in tako. Strašna smrt. Kar je pretresljivo, tisti ženski kodri speti v zatilju mladih punc, ki so tam vstali v Lubanjah, govorijo svojo zgodbo bolj jasno, kot kdorkoli bi to lahko. Zdaj, za Slovenijo je problem, seveda, da knjiga nosi naslov 12 zidov, ne 11 zidov. Kajti 12. zid je pa tisti, ki je najmočnejši, ki Churchill je govoril v Fultonu o tem, da se je spustil od Baltika do Jadrana, železna zavesa. In v slovenski mentaliteti in v mentaliteti družbe, ki je v Sloveniji na vrhu in ki je vsa rekrutirana v nekdanjem centralnem komiteju, je ta 12. zid najmočnejši. To je najmočnejša miselna armatura sodobne slovenske družbe z konca leta 2013. To je grozljivo.
An example of how this mentality is embedded in the highest level of politics today in Slovenia is Dr. Danilo Türk. He is the third president of the Republic of Slovenia and was strongly supported by Milan Kučan. Recently, he was named a candidate by the Slovenian government for the presidency of the United Nations. This was his reaction when in 2009 the tragic mass graveyard at Huda Jama was discovered.
Obtožbe so zelo hude, predvsem to, da se politični vrh sploh ne odziva na razkritje takšnih zločinov.
Bom našel čas, ko bom odgovoril tudi na to, ampak rad bi ponovil. Danes sem tu zaradi prvorazredne teme in o drugorazrednih temah ne bom govoril.
Pravi so po vojni poboj drugorazredna tema.
Politične manipulacije okrog tega so.
Vendar so v rovih tudi ženske.
To ne vemo, to naj raziščejo ljudje, ki raziskujejo.
Ko je Huda jama v letu 2009 bila razkrita do te podrobnosti, da so se ljudje lahko zgrozili, to isto leto, v katerem je tedajni predsednik države Danilo Türk odlikoval z visokim državnim priznanjem šefa nekdanje tajne politične komunistične policije. Kot v posmeh žrtvam. In tudi leto, v katerih se je o teh žrtvah izrekel kot o drugorazredni temi.
Tomaž Ertel was the last chief of the Yugoslav secret police, UDBA. He received the highest state decoration in 2009, which triggered international outrage. He even admitted that he was responsible for carrying out the imprisonment of Janez Janša in 1988, when Janša was jailed for being a dissident. Ertel claimed his concern was the safety of Slovenia, while he considered democratic elections to be a circus that had to be controlled. It is important to stress that in 2002, the Slovenian Supreme Court found that the UDBA was a criminal organization which had planned and organized criminal activities. The court specified that UDBA also falsified, fabricated and planted fake evidence in order to get rid of political dissidents or individuals who were not thinking in line with the communist regime.
UDBA je bila vse prisotna. Na nek način oni sami so si prizadevali, da so prisotni povsod v vseh porah življenja in ti dejansko, in seveda cela stvar je v bistvu temeljila na nekem strahu. Ti dejansko nisi vedel, tudi ko si se pogovarjal s sodelavci, v bistvu nisi vedel, ali delajo za UDBO ali ne delajo za UDBO. Tudi sam si bil verjetno pod nekim pritiskom, kako bi rekel, od tega, da te sumničijo, da delaš za UDBO in tako naprej. Skratka, nek vse prisotni strah. Tudi če pač UDBE ni bilo, je bila ves čas prisotna. In je pač cel ta sistem je temeljil v bistvu na tem strahu, da te v bistvu opazujejo, prisluškujejo, sledijo in tako naprej. Skratka, UDBA je bila na nek način pač tajna policija, ki je bila partijska policija, vezana direktno v bistvu na partijo, to pomeni, kako bi rekel, za obveščanje najvišjega vodstva pač takratne partije in za pridobivanje seveda tistih relevantnih informacij, ki bi na temelju katerih bi se pač oni potem odločali o tem, kako obračunati z notranjim sovražnikom, ne, ali v glavnem notranjim, ne, ker ta zunanji itak ni bil viden, ne. Tako da se je ves čas v bistvu obračunalo s tem notranjim sovražnikom in, ko bi rekel, in pač UDBA je imela tle najpomembnejšo vlogo pri tem pridobivanju informacij o tem, s kom obračunati, na kakšen način in skratka, kako naj se ta politika do disidentov vodi naprej.
Ob tem bi seveda še dodal, da ena velika težava, ki je pred Slovenijo, ki je ostala Sloveniji, nikako še ni razrešena, je težava povezana z arhivi. Arhivi bivše službe državne varnosti in seveda arhivi, ki so bili uničeni v času okrog prvih demokratičnih volitev. Zdaj, težava seveda je v tem, da prvič to je bilo nezakonito, da se je to sploh storilo. Nezakonito je zadeva je tudi nemoralna z vidika kulturne dediščine slovenskega naroda kot takšnega. In seveda je to tista ovira, ki je preprečila eno pravo katarzo tudi slovenske družbe, zato ker deli teh arhivov so ostali, so ohranjeni in zdaj seveda kapljajo z leti po obrokih nekako v javnost in vedno znova se neke travme, za katere bi bilo dobro, da bi bile razčiščene v 90-ih, ponavljajo. Dober primer, kako se je tem zadevam streglo, je seveda primer Nemčije, kjer so prvič ohranili veliko večino teh arhivov, drugič ustanovili ustrezno delovno telo, ki se s tem ukvarjalo, kajti seveda tehtalo je tudi pravice in človekove pravice tako žrtev, kot tisti, ki so neprostovoljno sodelovali z temi strukturami, torej so na nek urejen, kontroliran način poskrbeli, da z odpravljanjem starih krivic niso nastajale nove. V primeru Slovenije žal temu ni tako in jaz sem se tudi v lanskem letu in v začetku letošnjega leta še kar ukvarjal z arhivskim gradivom na Sovi, ki tam sploh ne bi smelo biti. Torej, tudi moji predhodniki, lahko uporabim zelo trdo besedo, so lagali o tem, da je to gradivo nekako bilo posredovano iz Sove same. Temu seveda ni bilo tako. Par tisoč dokumentov posamičnih se je odkrilo, našlo in seveda proces prenosa teh gradiv je bil izveden v Arhivu Republike Slovenije.
The former communist leaders, as well as their children and grandchildren, have inherited the leadership of state institutions, the roles of constitutional and Supreme Court judges, presidencies of the Court of Audit, governorships of the Central Bank, ambassadorships representing Slovenia, positions in the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption, and more. Take, for example, Igor Šoltes, the former president of the Court of Audit of Slovenia, the highest body for supervising state accounts, the state budget, and all public spending in Slovenia. He is the grandson of Edvard Kardelj, the founding father of the Communist Party in Slovenia. But what is most concerning for this story is the Slovenian judicial system, which keeps on ignoring basic democratic values. In its report of May 29, 2013, the European Commission stressed that the state in which it finds the Slovenian judicial system is unsatisfactory. Among their objections, Slovenia has the most judges per capita of any EU country, and yet the judiciary system is neither efficient nor transparent. Slovenia spends more money per citizen per year, 89 euros, to support this ineffective judiciary system than any other EU country. The EU average is 42 euros per citizen per year. 10 years prior, when Slovenia was evaluated for entry into the European Union, EU consultants warned Slovenia that its judiciary system must be fixed. A well-respected German consultant, Norman Dukov, said, "Slovenian judges are, like many other judges in Europe, mostly protecting their privileges and paychecks, despite the fact that Slovenian judges get very good paychecks in comparison to other employees in Slovenia and even in comparison to other European countries." It appears that no one listened. One of the targets of a personal vendetta and someone punished by this problematic judiciary system was the former Prime Minister of Slovenia, Janez Janša. Janez Janša, born in Ljubljana in 1958, served as Prime Minister of Slovenia from 2004 to 2008 and again from 2012 till 2013. He led the only government that held its full four-year term. It was the only time in history when Slovenia had a balanced budget and the national debt began to fall. Slovenia entered the Eurozone and Schengen area. During his government, Slovenia was the most effective new EU member state. Slovenia successfully led the European Council in 2008.
V čast in zadovoljstvo mi je, da sem danes tukaj med vami in seveda tudi v ponos. Ponos kot Slovencev, čigar državi je kot prvi novi državi članici Evropske unije zaupano vodenje sveta Unije. In v ponos kot Evropejcu, čigar Unija vstopa v leto 2008, s podpisano Lizbonsko pogodbo z razširjenim območjem evra in Schengna.
I want to pay tribute to the commitment, the intellectual and political honesty, the fairness of the Slovenian presidency.
Tous les peuples qui aspirent à voir le jour. La traduction, vous m'excuserez. Là où le soleil suit son cours, la querelle du monde sera bannie. Tout citoyen sera libre enfin et pas un ennemi. Et le frontalier sera son voisin. C'est ça l'esprit de votre présidence. C'est ça l'esprit de l'Europe. Alors je suis français, je ne vais pas lâcher ma Marseillaise, mais pendant 6 mois, je veux bien être slovène. Merci.
Janša remains the leader of the largest Slovenian political party, the 30,000-member-strong Slovenian Democratic Party, SDS, and is the current opposition leader. SDS favors continued care for its citizens in terms of free national healthcare and schooling, but supports a lean government, the privatization of government-run industries, and a general concept of less government, more efficiency, in order to protect the constitutional social state. By way of comparison, Janša's theories on how best to govern run parallel to those of his longtime friend and colleague, the Prime Minister of Germany, Angela Merkel. Janša worked as a freelance journalist in the 1980s. In the late 80s, he co-founded Mikroada, a computer company that functioned as technological center for dissident activities against the communist regime. As such, he was seen as a potential enemy of the ruling regime of Yugoslavia. He was accused of having planned to write an article, never published, in a popular liberal magazine called Mladina about the plans in Belgrade to use violent force to crush the nascent Slovenian movement in support of independence from Yugoslavia.
Janša je bil moteč dejavnik za režim, predvsem za takratno vojsko, ki je bila nad vsem. Skratka, Tito je pač vojski takrat podelil neko posebno vlogo in ta vloga je pač trajala še skozi vsa 80 leta, praktično do razpada Jugoslavije. Ampak skratka in je pač svojimi članki Janša upozoril nas in je v bistvu bil tudi procesiran strani v bistvu teh vojaških sodnih organov. Tako da v bistvu seveda bil tudi za partijo pač moteč, že od začetka 80-ih let. Potem pa seveda leta 87-88 zadeve pač eskalirajo zaradi tega, ker se gre Janša v bistvu pravega boja za oblast. Skratka, na nek način v tem svojem programu pri kandidaturi za predsednika ZSMS prvič v bistvu javno poudari, da tokrat gre za boj za oblast. Ne več v bistvu za nek način za boj za neko funkcijo v ZSMS-ju, ki naj bi pomenila pravzaprav podaljšano vlogo partije, ampak da gre za to, da bo ta družbena politična organizacija nastopila kot ena od recimo strank v boju za oblast. To je bilo seveda v bistvu za partijo nekaj nepojmljivega. Oni v bistvu svoje družbeno-politične organizacije nikoli niso videli v tej vlogi, ampak vedno kot podaljšek v bistvu na nek način svojega vpliva. In seveda v bistvu je to bilo za te vodilne pač v partiji takrat nekaj motečega.
Prišel s svojim programom, rekel, da bi ta mladinska organizacija morala biti en akter v tem političnem dogajanju. Skratka, še neki drugi momenti, da je Janša že takrat, torej 88. leta, šel ljudski oblasti, lahko to rečem, ne, sveta ta ljudska oblast pod narekovajem, tako strahotno na živce in da se to leče še danes, ne, da se to leče danes kot preteč časopis, ne, se v vsaki drugi številki skoraj kaj, ne, Janša, če drugega ne bodo ne vem kaj pogruntali, ne. Torej fantastično, mislim, da je grozljivo bombardiranje in napadanje Janše, ki torej ne samo, da je nehigienično, ampak je naravnost katastrofalno za to mentaliteto in za to kulturo teh novinarjev.
Janša committed no crime. He never even wrote the article of which he was accused. The only indication that he planned to write the article was a document marked with a green highlighter that the military court used as the only evidence against him. He hadn't even written a highlighted notes in question. Janša was tried and convicted for theoretically planning to publish an article, not for anything he actually did. For this, he was persecuted from 1983 onwards until he was finally arrested as a political dissident by an agent of the Slovene secret political police, SDV, Zvonko Hrastar, in 1988. Janša was tried before a military court in the so-called JBTZ process, along with 3 co-defendants, all of them considered anti-communist troublemakers. Before the trial, Janša was committed to 2 months in solitary confinement.
Je bila situacija še toliko boljša, ne, zaradi tega za partijo, ne, zaradi tega, ker lahko obračunajo z Janšo s tujo roko. To pomeni, ne da bi ga v bistvu procesirali skozi civilne organe, ampak je bila zdaj nekako priložnost, da ga pač prepustijo vojaškim organom in da ga pač oni procesuirajo in pač kaznujejo, ne. In odstranijo pravzaprav scene. To je bilo najbolj pomembno.
Da, upravili slovenska policija, torej služba državne varnosti, več nezakonitih preiskav na Mikroadi, kjer je bil Janša takrat zaposlen, tako da so vedeli, kaj ima noter, kaj iščejo.
Se pravi, nihče od nas pravzaprav ni še doživel tega, ne, kako bi rekel, vedno smo bili pred nekimi civilnimi sodišči, ker smo imeli pač odvetnike, lahko smo računali vendarle na, kako bi rekel, nek malo bolj pravni pristop, ne. Ko si enkrat, ne vem, padel v roke pač tem vojaškim organom, ko bi rekel, so vsa ta pravila padla v vodo, ne. Tako da nihče od nas pravzaprav ni bil nikoli procesuiran pred vojaškimi organi, ne. Razen Janeza, ampak ne v tem smislu, da bi bil v zaporu, ne. Ker v bistvu smo bili takoj tudi soočeni z, kako bi rekel, z grožnjami, ne. In potem tudi z stalnimi sistematičnimi v bistvu preiskavami oziroma zaslišanje, ne.
In temeljni očitki so bili ti, ker je bila javnost je bila izključena v samem postopku, ne. Potem poslovanje, kot rečemo, sodišče je godilo Srbo-Hrvaško, ti si lahko se tako, torej skratka slovenščine niso upoštevali, čeprav bila naša določba v slovenski ustavi, 212. člen, da državni organi na področju Slovenije uporabljajo slovenski jezik. In potem je bilo izključeno tudi to, da bi imeli zagovornike, odvetnike, ne? Ampak so lahko izbirali samo izmed vojaških zagovornikov. Odvetniki so bili izključeni iz tega procesa.
Janez Janša was sentenced to 18 months in prison after what amounted to little more than a show trial. But that ignited mass demonstrations in Slovenia and helped convince the remaining undecided Slovenes of the dangers of the communist regime, offering a course under which Slovenes could further unite in their strides toward independence.
Najprej da povem, da se mi je zdelo pomembno to, da so prvič v zgodovini socialistične Jugoslavije neki zaporniki, politični zaporniki prišli ven kot moralni zmagovalci. To se je v bistvu zgodilo prvič. In v bistvu to je že kazalo pravzaprav na šibkost tega sistema, ne. Ampak seveda sem se pač krepko zmotil, ne. Tudi glede na teh preteklih 25 let, recimo, ne, bi rekel, da ta bitka še zdaleč ni dobljena. Skratka, da nas v bistvu vse skupaj še čaka neka streznitev.
In potem traja, pa se spremeni oblast, ne? Torej postanemo država z novimi organi, z vsem mehanizmom in tako naprej. Ampak ta sodba potem šele 95. leta pade na Vrhovnem sodišču slovenskem. In sodba je razveljavljena, ker se dejansko so ugotovili, da ni bilo kaznivega dejanja.
Janša's first political steps sparked the movement to establish an alternative political party to communism and claim independence from Yugoslavia, though it would take another 3 years before Slovenia finally won independence in 1991. But Janša's ordeals had just begun. Even as he oversaw his nation's independence, Janša recognized that the communist leaders had not changed. They had merely swapped political labels and reformed the largely similar constituencies in order to remain in office. Janša would be the target of other suspect charges, not just once more, but twice. At the time of independence, Janša was instrumental in the development of the Slovenian Defense Forces. His first political function was as Minister of Defense from 1990 till 1994, during which time he was elected president of his political party, Slovenian Democratic Party, SDS. The government was led by Liberal Democratic Party, LDS at the time. That was a new name for a party consisting largely of the old communist leaders. The pressure on Janša was growing. It peaked with the so-called Depalavas affair. Without a trial and with no proof of his responsibility for the affair, Janša was forced to step down as a Minister of Defense. In short, a former worker at the ministry, Mr. Milan Smolnikar, was arrested in Depalavas by 4 army officers and charged with smuggling confidential documents out of the ministry. Documents which were found in his car. Political accusations began against the Defense Ministry having the right to arrest civilians. Within a few days, it was discovered and officially recognized that Mr. Smolnikar is a secret police collaborator tasked with activities to harm a defense minister. The mere fact of the front page of Mladina being already printed on the night of the arrest makes the case look like a well-thought-out plan for publicly enabling a political rival. The arrest of Milan Smolnikar happened on the night of March 20th, 1994. At the time, the issue of Mladina should have been printed already, and yet the full article was plastered on the cover of the magazine the next morning, blaming Janša. Original documents today prove that Depalavas was a case of the old nomenclature abusing several state and parastate institutions for illegal operations with political opponents. None of these illegal findings were prosecuted. Only Drago Kos, who was working as a criminal police officer at the time, was charged with abuse of power and false identification, a charge that was dropped without any legal explanation. He was the key contact for Milan Smolnikar, the arrested civilian who turned out to be a registered co-worker of police. His mission was to gather documentation at Ministry of Defense that would discredit Janez Janša. Smolnikar was with Drago Kos just an hour before Smolnikar's arrest. Kos was involved in several affairs later on. One of them featured eavesdropping on a journalist, for which he was condemned for breach of basic human rights. Despite all this, he will be one of the key people behind the next affair, one that will cost Janez Janša the election for Prime Minister. It was only in 2003, 9 years later, that the charges of the Depalavas affair lapsed. So the 4 officers of Ministry of Defense, who were the only ones charged, were never proven guilty. Janša had once again been blamed for something without proof of his involvement. Slovenia is a country that seems overrun with judges. 49.9 per 100,000 citizens, more than twice as many as the average for all the other European countries. However, despite all this, Janša's public support never wavered.
Ste slišali, kaj se je zgodilo? Tako da tega ne bi razlagal. Rad bi se vam zahvalil za to podporo, še posebej vsem, ki ste vztrajali z današnjim dnem. Zadeva ni končana. Borimo se naprej. Bravo!
To je eden takih prvih velikih stresov slovenske komaj rojene demokracije. No in to se je pokazalo oziroma dokazalo tudi na ulici. Ljudje so čutili, da se je naredila ena velika krivica in zmontiran proces. In na ulicah se je zbralo na 10.000 ljudi. Ne. Iz vseh krajev Slovenije so prišli protestirati in podpirati Janeza Janšo, ki je bil takoj po recimo zmagoviti vojni za Slovenijo, da je najpopularnejši politik v Sloveniji po eni izmed javnomnenjskih anket. Tako da je bil to drugi udarec, recimo simbolu slovenske pomladi.
Kot študent, ki je spremljal to področje obrambe, sem nekako imel prepričanje v sebi in to prepričanje seveda se je s časom tudi vedno znova potrjevalo, da je bila vojna za Slovenijo leta 1991 velik dogodek. Slovenci smo postali prvič narod, nacija in eden izmed zelo zaslužnih v tistem času, vsaj po mojem prepričanju, je bil tudi takratni obrambni minister Janez Janša. In tisto dogajanje v letih po osamosvojitvi, ki sem ga spremljal tudi kot študent z tega področja, obramboslovnega področja, se mi je zdelo zelo nenavadno. Torej nenavadno razne afere v zvezi z nastajajočo slovensko vojsko, preoblikovanjem teritorialne obrambe v slovensko vojsko. In vse skupaj nekako je kulminiralo v aferi Depala vas, za katero se je kasneje pokazalo, da je slonela na trhnih temeljih, oziroma ravno nasprotno, pravno se je dokazalo na strani parlamentarne pristojne službe, da seveda nič ni bilo sporno v tistih ravnanjih takrat, strani pristojnih delavcev Ministrstva za obrambo, in na drugi strani, da je vse skupaj nekako imelo pridih delovanja politične policije v starih časih, kot smo ga lahko brali v kakšnih knjigah.
Whatever enemies Janša's outspoken voice had made were still in power and had an axe to grind. The masked protectors of the communist regime and its operations, which Janša has been fighting for 3 decades, still enjoy a disturbing degree of influence. Despite Janša's imprisonment in 1988 and forced resignation in 1994, he always maintained significant popular support. His enemies, however, saw a fresh opportunity to bring him down with the Patria affair. As if the 2 cases of unproven responsibility were not enough, there is a third story evolving as we speak. In 2013, former Prime Minister Janša was sentenced to 2 years in prison after a trial that was laced with conflicts of interest, indefensibly non-specific accusations, and a failure to prove his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. It was alleged that Janša committed an intervention of an unknown nature at an undetermined moment in time, at an undetermined place, and through an undetermined method of communication through intermediaries, and for the benefit of someone else, receiving an unknown promise of a reward from a Finnish arms manufacturer, Patria, which was then offered a lucrative contract to provide armored vehicles to the Slovenian army. With such non-specific accusations, Janša could hardly defend himself. It appeared that not even the prosecution knew with what they were charging him with. The so-called Patria affair trial has been condemned by international legal specialists, some of whom wonder if human rights were not violated, in an eerie parallel to the wrongful imprisonment of Yulia Tymoshenko. In 2004, the Finnish manufacturer Patria and the Slovenian company Rotis were given a contract worth 278 million euros to produce 135 armored military vehicles for the Slovenian army for use in its obligatory aid as a member of NATO. From the start and before Janša took office in 2004, there were reasonable questions as to just how a manufacturer for such a lucrative commission should be selected. The government of Janša's immediate predecessor, Anton Rob, had tried to grant the same commission to Sistemska Tehnika, a formerly state-owned, recently privatized manufacturer, part owned by Zdenko Pauček, a personal friend of Prime Minister Rob and a member of his party LDS. Rob's government provided a letter of intent, but did not hold a public bid to select the winner of the commission. When Janša won the 2004 election, his Ministry of Defense thought it more proper to hold an international public tender for this government commission, which was in fact what the law called for. Patria won the commission and began to build the armored vehicles. Fast forward to 2008, when the affair began. Mere weeks before the Slovenian parliamentary elections, a Finnish television documentary called The Truth About Patria was screened on Slovenian national television. A Finnish journalist claimed, without presenting any overt evidence, Janša's involvement in the scandal. The journalist stated that Janša was the corrupt politician who had helped Patria receive the commission. The case in its initial phase was populated by people connected to the leaders of what might be called a mask of democracy and people with personal vendettas against Janez Janša. Recall Drago Kos from the Depala Vas affair. From 2004 onwards, Kos was the president of the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption. In the Finnish documentary, Kos made vague accusations and was the person who initiated the investigations and cooperated with foreign investigators on the Patria case. And it was not just him, but his whole family that was involved in the case. His brother, Miran Kos, was the legal representative of the company that lost the public tender for the Patria deal and that sent the anonymous letter to the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption. His sister, Marta Kos, in the same year purchased a €10,000 ad in the daily newspapers that criticized Janša's government. Today she is the ambassador of Slovenia in Berlin. All of them were members of LDS, the party that most of the members of the Communist Party of Slovenia joined after independence. The media latched onto this idea from the Finnish documentary of Janša's involvement. The idea had been planted in the minds of those with an axe to grind or who would benefit politically from using that axe to cut Janša down to size. In fact, the evidence showed that the letter J, noted in the correspondence between Patria and the lobbyists, did not belong to Janša, but to a Croatian citizen called Jerkovic. The Patria case was the most important election issue, and Janša lost the election by a mere 1%. The case against Janša should have been thrown out immediately, but it was not. While the affair broke in 2008, Janša was not included in the investigation until 2009, and he was indicted in 2011, just before the next round of elections. There were other reasons to suspect that the Patria affair indictment was frighteningly similar to the 1988 show trial that threw Janša into prison for theoretically planning to publish the truth. Even after the indictment was announced, the international public has maintained their belief in Janez Janša as a European politician.
SDS is therefore a strong example to other political parties throughout Europe. Together with the two other EPP parties during the 2004-2008 mandate, your party proved this, as it was the only time in Slovenian history that the whole mandate was completed.
I know Janez very well. He's the most trustworthy person who I know, and that's why I wish all my best for him and for his party in the forthcoming elections, because we need really European leaders who know what is responsible of the individual country.
Ich unterstütze Janez Janša ganz besonders und wünsche mir, dass er in der Wahl erfolgreich ist. Er hat Slowenien in den Euroraum geführt und er ist ein großartiger Europäer und deshalb wünsche ich ihm viel Erfolg und viel Kraft im Wahlkampf.
Janez Janša je obsojen za kaznivo dejanje, ki ga v zakonu ni.
What we have here is one of the political leaders being prosecuted and tried, and this is always very delicate from the perspective of democracy, of the free elections, and so on.
The indictment was even more non-specific than the Finnish documentary that had first sparked suspicion. It was alleged that Janša had committed a crime by accepting the promise of receiving, though never actually receiving, an unknown reward for his intervention of an unknown nature in the public tender process, which Patria eventually won. The specific terms of the indictment were distinctive for their suspicious lack of specificity.
Kaznivo dejanje kot tako mora biti zelo jasno navedeno v sami sodbi. Tega v tem primeru ni bilo. In ko je bila sodba prevedena v angleščino, je to gotovo postalo nekaj, kar je pritegnilo pozornost tujih pravnih strokovnjakov, kajti to so osnovne predpostavke sploh za začetek kazenskega postopka. V tem primeru ti pogoji niso bili izpolnjeni, zato lahko zagotovimo, da se je kazenski postopek začel popolnoma v nasprotju tudi s slovensko veljavno zakonodajo.
According to some precedents of the higher court and the Supreme Court, as well as the Constitutional Court of Slovenia, but also throughout Europe, it is impossible to even start the prosecutorial side of the proceeding unless you know when a certain criminal act occurred, who was the one who participated in it, who offered you something something as a reward for your action. Yet here in this particular case, neither the time was known, neither the location was known, neither there's any, at least according to my reading of the whole case, any evidence of who is the person who offered that reward, nor, and this is most importantly, I think, nor any shred of evidence, even slightest indication of how did this person, Mr. Janez Janša, accept this promise. You need to accept the promise, not just be offered a promise. There has to be a meeting of the minds, as it were. You need to agree. So we need to have a proof. We need to have a witness telling us that somebody agreed to that. We need to have a recording or something like that. Nothing of that is in there.
Коли збиралася трійка людей, вони так і називались трійки, і втрьох вирішували будь-яку долю. Припустимо, що відбувається в Україні? В Україні нещодавно внесли зміну в Кримінальний кодекс, по якому тебе можуть засудити не за те, що ти зробив, чи не за те, що хтось бачив, що ти зробив, а за те, що хтось чув, що хтось бачив, що ти щось зробив. Тобто тебе можуть засудити з чужих слів. І якась людина, якщо треба, може написати свою заяву і сказати, я знаю, що така людина зробила щось погане, і цю людину зразу без ніякого суда і слідства будуть судити.
Je treba opozoriti tudi na to, da je Vrhovno sodišče nedavno, ko je razveljavilo neko povojno sodbo, zelo natančno poudarilo pomen dosledne opredelitve kaznivega dejanja glede na čas, kraj in način storitve. Ker tega v primeru, ki ga je imelo, ni bilo, je takratno sodbo razveljavilo. In sodba v primeru Patria na prvi stopnji je v tem pogledu zelo podobna tisti sodbi, ki je bila pred Vrhovnim sodiščem že razveljavljena.
One would expect that such a high-profile case, one that has a huge impact on democracy in a newly democratic country, would have been taken very seriously. Instead, we have another parallel to the case of Tymoshenko in the Ukraine. The judge for the Tymoshenko trial was only 32 years old, having been appointed by the president of the Ukraine, Yanukovych, mere weeks before the trial. He was just a puppet, there to execute orders and sit in on a show trial. In Slovenia, Judge Barbara Klanček, who oversaw the Patria case in the first instance, was just 34 years old when she got the case, with none of the critical experience necessary to judge heavy constitutional questions, as she was asked to do in this flimsy case.
And I personally wouldn't take this responsibility on my own shoulders. To engage in a heavy constitutional interpretation in such a delicate, democratically delicate type of case. And I'm much older than the judge in this particular case. And so I think there was an obvious route for her to pursue. That would have been to send the case to the Constitutional Court. And yet she didn't do it.
More than 50 hearings took place over the course of the trial, and dozens of witnesses were called to the stand. Among them was Karel Erjavec, current leader of DeSUS, the Slovenian Pensioners' Party, and Minister of Defense at the time of the Patria affair. He was the man who signed off on the Patria contract. As a left-leaning politician, in theory, Erjavec would have been opposed to Janša and his center-right administration. But even Erjavec made clear that Janša had nothing whatsoever to do with the public tender and selection procedure, all of which was carried out by an expert committee within the Ministry of Defense. Other witnesses likewise confirmed that no one had influenced members of the expert committee and that no members of the committee had been in direct or indirect contact with Janša during the selection process.
Vendarle, v primeru, ki je bil pred sodiščem, ni bilo natančno opredeljeno niti to, kaj pomeni sprejem, o posredovanju pa sploh ni bilo govora. Kaj pomeni sprejem? Sprejem pomeni, da potem, ko nekdo dobi neko ponudbo, na njo tudi izrecno odgovori in potrdi, da jo je sprejel. Tega v postopku ni bilo mogoče nikjer zaslediti. Poleg tega pa tudi ničesar ni o tem, ni nobenih znakov, da bi prišlo do kakršnekoli posredovanja, torej do vplivanja na komisije, ki so odločale v primeru razpisa, ki je bil takrat v teku. Ob tem je treba opozoriti tudi na to, da je prav o postopku tekel poseben sodni postopek proti osebe iz Ministrstva za obrambo in tudi proti takratnemu obrambnemu ministru Karlu Erjavcu. In Karl Erjavec je bil oproščen vsakih obtožb. Torej, v tem postopku je bilo dokazano, da ni bilo nikakršnega zunanjega vplivanja na izbiro. Kar pomeni, da je en bistven del, ki ga zakon zahteva za kaznivo dejanje, sploh ni bil podan.
On the 30th of January 2014, another fact came to light that further demonstrates the questionable so-called guilt of Jānis Janša. A court in Finland repealed the indictment against the Patria officials who had been accused of offering bribes to win the Slovenian contract. The Finnish judge stated that there was insufficient direct proof of wrongdoing, the indictment deemed vague and circumstantial. If, according to Finnish authorities, there is no proof that Patria even offered a bribe, then it is hard to imagine how a Slovenian court can convince itself that Janša accepted a bribe. The Finnish court acted appropriately, dismissing a case based on vague and circumstantial evidence. The Slovenian court failed to do so in the first instance. It is now even more reasonable to expect that the indictment against Jānis Janša will be thrown out, if Janša is tried by a fair court and with an effective rule of law. The prosecution was unable to prove that Janša had received any form of bribe. What the trial did show was that Janša had nothing to do with the Patria selection process. It was demonstrated that Patria had paid bribes via intermediaries, but the specifically named people who were paid were mostly not charged, while one person who was not involved at all was charged, Janša. Such a general, arbitrary criminal charge has prevented Janša from defending himself, since he was not been told any specifics of what he is accused.
Vse, kar je bilo predloženo, so bili samo indici. In iz indicev je skoraj da zelo težko ali skoraj da nemogoče zgraditi verigo, ki pripelje do prepričljivega dokaznega sklepa. Vendar pa tudi ti indici, ki so bili v postopku predstavljeni, deloma so bili predstavljeni tudi kot dokazno gradivo, ne vsebujejo ničesar, kar bi omenjevalo prvega obdolženca za storitev kaznivega dejanja. Zato je tudi to velika pomanjkljivost postopka, ki je tekel pred okrajnim sodiščem.
Former constitutional judge Mateusz Krivic publicly said, "Also because I am Jānis Janša's sharp political critic, I have decided to publish my honest and professional critique of this criminal charge. The court has not presented to the public any evidence. In this case, the court could have or should have considered the fact that it is judging the opposition leader. The standard of proof for a criminal charge in such a case should have been, exactly because of the possible influence on the election process, much more strict than it is for other offenders, and not looser, as it happened to be in the Patria case."
You are unable to show your alibi for an undetermined moment in time. You're unable to defend yourself, basically. You have nothing to offer. if the charge is so general.
It even took 3 months for the judge who ran the process in court to write up the text of the case and hand it to the accused. Janša was then given only 15 days to file an appeal. On the other hand, the court does not have any time restriction on how long it can take to write the judgment. The time taken has no consequences for the court, but it diminishes the legal rights of the defendant. In 2013, the government and the Supreme Court promised that the average case resolution at the appeal court shall not take more than 3 months. But 3-month term had already expired at January 26, 2014. So, what happened in the ostensibly democratic and forward-thinking Slovenian judicial system that allowed the Patria trial to be heard on such ghostly charges, and which led to Janša's ultimate conviction? In addition to the flimsy, paper-thin weight of the prosecution's accusations, the trial itself was stacked against Janša, laced as it was with people who had personal vendettas against him, clear and present conflicts of interest. The judicial system has not undergone a democratic transition since 1991. There has been little reform or staff turnover, unlike in other transitional countries. Judges and prosecutors who collaborated with the Yugoslav secret police still hold positions of authority. The current Attorney General, Zvonko Fišer, was a prosecutor who drastically violated human rights in the former communist regime. At the end of the 80s, among other things, he indicted 2 Catholic priests to prison just because they held a memorial mass for a group of innocent civilians who had been tortured and killed during the communist revolution.
Ja, potem je tukaj Janez Janša, ne, katerega diskurs je pa obraten, ne, on je pa stalno usmerjen k temu, da razgrajuje partijski monopol in zaradi tega deležen seveda strahotnih medijskih pogromov in sodnih obračunov. Kar se tiče procesa Patrije, je to pač montiran proces, se pravi montiran proces v tem smislu, da je krivda jasna obtožnica, še predno je, bi rekel, prva obravnava se sploh začela. Ne. Potem so še hujše stvari, recimo v sodbi, a ne, se lingvistična analiza razbere, da je zaključek sodbe pisala druga roka kot celo sodbo. Cela sodba je pisana v neki popolnoma šlampasti, površni slovenščini, medtem ko zaključek je zborno urejen in normiran. Vsakdo, kdo se razume na logiko besedil, recimo vidi, da tega ni pisala ista roka. To tudi kaže iz analiz, tekstualnih analiz predloga, se pravi obtožnega predloga tožilca Ferlinca, ki je bil med drugim tudi sodelavec, koliko smo lahko videli v tako imenovanem Udbanetu tajne vojaške komunistične policije, kjer je že na prvi strani, a ne, strani je pa 41, ne, napisano, da je Janez Janša kriv. Ne. In potem je 40 strani samo potrjevanje tega, bi rekel, primarnega absurda. Ne. Logika besedila kartezijanske pameti je ta, da ti izpelješ dokaze, navedeš dokaze in na koncu narediš zaključek. To je pa zaključek na začetku. In ni utemeljen na nobenih dokazih. Da se ne vprašamo, kaj pa ljudstvo pravi, v čigar imenu se izrekajo taki sodbi. Ne? Tudi partija je vedno sodila v imenu ljudstva. Ne? Vsi montirani procesi so se vedno dogajali v imenu ljudstva. Ljudstva zato seveda nihče ni nič vprašal. Ne? In tudi, če je ljudstvo predstavljeno na nekem nivoju, bi rekel, pravnih strokovnjakov, ustavno sodišče, profesori pravne fakultete in univerze in to, torej tako rekoč vsi brez izjeme so ugotovili, da je ta sodba popolnoma pomanjkljiva in bazira na dokazih, ki to niso. Ne? Ampak tudi tukaj nihče ne upošteva, ne? Recimo ljudstva ali pa njegovih predstavnikov. Ne? To je vse v temelju narobe, narobe. Ne? To je pač montiran proces, ne? Kjer je pač zgolj neka farsa, a ne, potrebna za to, da se človeka diskvalificira in se ga umakne iz javnosti in se ga zapre. To je montiran proces.
After the Second World War, Yugoslav communist dictator Tito instigated a number of processes that condemned free-minded individuals to death or to hard labor on the prison island of Goli Otok. Those who objected to Tito's vision of communist Yugoslavia were dealt with, made to disappear. These people, like in the case of Janez Janša, were condemned before a trial even started.
Oblast ima popoln nadzor nad pravosodjem. Del pristojnosti sodišč prenese na upravne organe. Ti brez vsakršne sodne obravnave pošiljajo ljudi na poboljševalno ali družbeno koristno delo na Goli otok. Sodbe prepisujejo iz obtožnic. Sodijo torej kar javni tožilci.
Na zboru nas vseh imel govor en visok oficir Udbe, ki nam je povedal, rekel je, da ali bomo se spremenili svoje prepričanje in bomo spet zvesti Titu ali pa Stalinu ali bomo pa ostali na tem Golem otoku zavedno.
The conflicts of interest and the connections to the old guard go even further. The prosecutor who filed the initial indictment against Janša in 2011, Branka Zobec-Hrastar, is the wife of Zvonko Hrastar, the Yugoslav secret police agent who arrested Janša back in 1988. She was also the investigative prosecutor in the Depala Vas affair. So the name Hrastar was laced throughout all three affairs against Janez Janša.
We have common European documents at the European level describing this common standard that requires and specifically states that whenever in such a conflict, and even much minor type of conflict, the public official, including prosecutor, should do anything within her or his power to recluse herself. There's the Bordeaux Declaration, the common declaration of the prosecutors, European prosecutors, as well as several documents of the Council of Europe and the Committee of Ministers that expressly states that you should do everything within your power to avoid such conflict. And yet this was obviously breached.
That alone should have been sufficient to dismiss the case by way of conflict of interests. Had the prosecution been serious, or had they not relied on internal corruption to move the case along, they should surely have advised that someone else, with no direct connection to Janša, filed the initial indictment. The current prosecutor, Andrej Ferlinc, as confirmed by newly public records, collaborated with the Yugoslav secret military security services.
Vzorci delovanja, o katerih sem že govoril, torej delovanja politične policije, o širjenju dezinformacij, o plasiranju lažnih informacij, bodisi med delovno javnost, torej med sodelavce, bodisi v ožjem smislu ali širšem smislu, torej v ožjem delovnem okolju, širšem delovnem okolju, ali celo v medije, pojavljanje nekih medijskih konstruktov, pisanje anonimnih pisem kot način delovanja, sem nekako spoznal in ocenil, da očitno ta vzorec delovanja, ki je bil naperjen tako proti meni kot direktorju službe in tudi inštituciji kot takšni, je zelo podoben vzorec, kot smo ga lahko zaznali bodisi v aferi Depala Vas ali pa ne nazadnje tudi v aferi Patria. Torej govorimo o modus operandi delovanja politične policije, ki je opisan v priročnikih te politične policije, ki pa so preživeli in sem jih tudi sam imel možnost prebrati in preštudirati.
These are all signs that the Slovene judicial system is still infected with the holdover grudges from a bygone era. Behind the masks of democracy lurk the goals of the old guard, to demolish the political career of Janez Janša. Most of these former secret police collaborators not only do not deny their past cooperation, but some even sing their own praises for it, citing their loyalty to Yugoslavia without regard for the crimes against its own citizens. It is unsurprising that, according to popular polls, the Slovene judicial system receives the lowest levels of confidence of the Slovenian citizens. Representatives of the high courts in Slovenia even went so far as to comment and congratulate Judge Barbara Klanček for her brave criminal charge.
Soon after the decision was reached at the first instance, there was this judge from the Court of Appeals who made a public statement published something and congratulated the judge at the first instance for her courageous conviction, while at the same time comparing the people who came to the court and expressed their disagreement with the judgment to the people in North Korea who followed their North Korean leader, that personality cult thing. And so she was at the same time humiliating part of the Slovenian people, of the electorate, followers of Janez Janša in this case, and at the same time congratulating the lower court judge for her courageous conviction. And now this really becomes problematic when we realize that now this case is going to the same court of appeals that this particular judge comes from. So what we have here is an obvious abridgment of the Article 6 of the European Convention of Human Rights, the fair trial. You cannot have a fair trial unless the appearance of the judiciary is also impartial. And this was not in the case in this particular instance.
Ljudstvo je že izražalo svoje mnenje pred sodiščem, ne? Ampak da to naredi sodnica višjega sodišča, ki mora potem odločati o pritožbi, in da to naredi v času, ko postopek še teče, in da to ne naredi v časopisu Ciciban ali pa v Slovenskih novicah, ampak v tako imenovani pravni praksi, ki je ključna strokovna revija za pravno znanost na Slovenskem. To pa presega vsako mero.
This is something that interferes with the free forming of the political will from the bottom up, as it were, and interferes with it heavily. It skews the political process. This process is unequal, it is unfair, and democracy is being distorted for this reason.
In 1988, Janez Janša was on the cover of the popular news magazine Mladina, with all of Slovenia in support of him. But only 2 years later, Mladina was privatized by a network of former secret police collaborators and has made Janša their main target, plastering their covers with unflattering photos and caricatures of him. They were the first to publish news of his indictment in 2011, 30 days before Janez Janša himself was served with the official document.
Iz današnjega vidika imam občutek, da je tudi Mladina bila na nek način vodena, instrumentalizirana in da ni bila popolnoma svobodna. Takrat to jaz osebno nisem čutil, zaradi tega, ker nisem bil del te ekipe, ki je imela odprto komunikacijo z politiko, ne? Ampak sem v bistvu bolj skrbel za ta novinarski, uredniški del revije. Obstaja na plošče Pankratov Državni ljubimci. Tako da tudi ta scena, tudi ta punk scena, recimo, ki je bila takrat na nek način del te, kako bi rekel, opozicijske scene, ne, oziroma del te kritike tega režima, ne. Tudi ta scena in vsa ta scena, ki je bila, kako bi rekel, underground scena, pravzaprav, in medijska scena z Mladino, Katedro in Tribuno, je bila na nek način, lahko jo označimo, da smo bili vsi pravzaprav državni ljubimci. Skratka, kljub temu, da smo bili opozicija, v bistvu smo bili tolerirani.
Janša is recognized for his role as a dissident against the Yugoslav regime. He is perceived as a humble, hard-working man, and outside of the political arena, he lives a quiet life with his wife and children. His solid policies and consistent leadership have maintained his popularity throughout the tumultuous attempts to push him aside, the Patria affair being only one of several similar examples.
Situacija je podobna v tem smislu, da še vedno neke strukture, ki so vidne ali pa nevidne, še bolj tiste nevidne, pravzaprav obvladujejo situacijo in imajo v rokah močne vzvode oblasti, ne. Med drugim tudi tudi sodstvo. Nažalost se tudi v bistvu sodstvu ni zgodilo kakšno posebno očiščenje, ne. Skratka, ljudje so isti ali pa izvirajo iz družin, ki bi rekel, znanih revolucionarjev, ne. In, kaj bi rekel, na nek način se v bistvu tudi tle ni zgodilo nič. Ne? In seveda je v bistvu bilo sodstvo tudi ena od možnosti, da se pač Janšo ustavi. Če se že niso odločili v bistvu za likvidacijo v fizičnem smislu, so se pa pač odločili za likvidacijo preko sodišč v nekem moralnem smislu. In to se v bistvu zdaj dogaja, čeprav je v bistvu za mene osebno ta proces čista farsa.
Despite the evident problems with the prosecution and the Patria trial, Janez Janša was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment on June the 5th, 2013. The sentence is not yet legally binding and is being vigorously appealed. The night of the sentencing, in various towns around Slovenia, graveyard candles were lit and set at the entrance to local courthouses in a peaceful form of protest. After hearing of the several affairs in which Janša was implicated, though with nothing proven, one may wonder how he still has a lively and strong political career. The mere whiff of a scandal is often enough to ruin politicians abroad or at least derail their careers. But Janša has survived, with his popularity largely equal now to what it was before the Patria news broke. This is due to several important factors. First, all charges against him, and there were more than 150 during past 30 years, have been sooner or later proven wrong. Second, all charges came from the same circle of old communist nomenclature. Third, objective viewers see that Janša has been the most productive and successful prime minister in Slovenian history.
Vlada Janeza Janše je pripravila precej ambiciozen reformni program. V njem so bile nekatere strukturne reforme, predvsem pa je bila jasno izražena ambicija za privatizacijo in za umik države iz gospodarstva, kar se mi zdi zelo pomembno, kajti prav državna lastnina in možnost vpletanja politike v gospodarstvo povzroča, da je slovensko gospodarstvo na to krizo tako slabo pripravljeno. In ocenjujem seveda, da so se nekatere močne tranzicijske mreže čutile močno ogrožene. Ni naključje, da so se zgodili hudi protesti, hude vstaje v času vlade Janeza Janše, po tistem, ko je vlada napovedala strukturne reforme, ko je napovedala in izvajala konsolidacijo javnih financ, ko je tudi napovedala umik države iz gospodarstva, kajti to je bila na nek način grožnja tudi vplivnim tranzicijskim mrežam, da bo seveda prekinjena oziroma zmanjšana njihova moč.
The Patria affair has barely affected Janša's political career, and popular support for the public sees the trial for what it is and sees Janša for the positive strides he has helped the young nations of Slovenia to make. His party, SDS, has only one fewer seat in parliament than the majority party. Recent poll from Centre for European Studies sees SDS as a big winner of the next EU elections. But this is not just about Janez Janša. What is most disturbing is that this sort of legal mockery can happen at all. The European Union should not permit such a violation of basic legal rights at such a visible level to go unnoticed and uncorrected. If more EU judges and even citizens understood Slovenian and could therefore follow every step of the proceedings, then there would surely be outrage to match the Tymoshenko affair.
Тимошенко, Янош і ще багато людей, які сьогодні страждають від диктатур, це не просто люди, доля яких важлива для них самих. Це не просто доля Яноша, чи це не тільки доля Тимошенка. Вони самі, можливо, справляться з своєю проблемою, але це проблема суспільства.
Абсолютно бездоказова база, але суспільству видається, що людина там злочинниця, він мусить бути засуджений. Такого не може бути в нормальній демократичній країні. Я сьогодні, якщо щиро, я в шоці. Бо мені здавалося, що всі 27 країн Європейського Союзу – це вже нормально продвинуті демократичні країни. І коли я з таким фактом стикнувся тут, в Європі, то це Шкода.
Janša's prosecution was a targeted attack against him personally, a tactic to ruin his political career. It highlights problems with the Slovenian judicial system, which seems not to have made the transition to transparency and democratic practices. Despite having more than twice as many judges per capita compared to other European countries, and twice the European average cost per year to run the judicial system, Slovenia receives less than a third the number of cases that their neighbors, Italy and Austria. It leads Europe in judicial backlog, with an ever-expanding stack of cases waiting, often many years, to be heard. The system also appears to be lax in self-policing. While Austria saw 50 disciplinary actions against state attorneys in 2010 and Italy saw 175, Slovenia saw only one. Does this mean that Slovenian state attorneys are 50 times more honest and professional than their Austrian counterparts, or that the Slovenian judicial system is insufficiently self-critical? On the 13th of November 2013, the European People's Party issued a resolution on the situation in Slovenia. Slovenia is in a difficult economic situation and needs a broad support in the Slovenian population to tackle the consequences of the financial crisis and to pursue the economic and other necessary reforms to overcome the crisis and conclude the transition. The EPP underlines the need for impartial and independent judiciary in all member states. In this context, it calls for the swift adoption of rigid lustration laws in all member states, which have not yet done so, as well as their thorough implementation, and for the transparent and public scrutiny of this process.
All the EPP, we are together with our good friend and former Prime Minister of your great country of Slovenia, Janez Janša.
Being European means to be European in Slovenia as well as in Brussels. They cannot stick to the rules and to the principles of democracy only in Brussels and then go home and forget about them. And what happened to our colleague, to Mr. Janez Janša, is the proof that the socialists are not following the democracy rules. And this is the signal that we are sending to them, asking them to respect the democracy, to respect the rules, to don't use the judiciary system as a tool, a political tool. Living in democracy means to respect the basic rules of democracy.
Daher sollte keine Regierung, unabhängig von Land- und Parteizugehörigkeit, versuchen, Einfluss auf Richter in ihrer Entscheidungsfindung auszuüben, etwa politische Opposition einzuschüchtern.
No one is blamed or criticized or guilty by unknown reasons at unknown places with unknown partners for unknown payments. Sorry friends, this is too much.
Razlogi, da tranzicija v Sloveniji ni bila uspešno zaključena, so gotovo v tem, da so se nekateri vzorci obnašanja iz nekdanjega socialističnega sistema prenesli v novo demokratično ureditev. Treba se zavedati, da je Slovenija danes tista država v Evropski uniji, v kateri je daleč največji delež državne lastnine v gospodarstvu. Vsi ključni sektori gospodarstva, bančništvo, zavarovalništvo, energetika, transport, infrastruktura so pod vplivom politike. Na ta način pa se tudi odpirajo vrata za vpliv nekdanjih in sedanjih tranzicijskih mrež, ki zelo uspešno obvladujejo ta podjetja. Če pogledamo slovensko gospodarstvo, ugotovimo, da med 30 največjimi podjetji jih je kar polovica takšnih, v katerih ima država največji delež ali pa celo večinski delež in s tem odločilen vpliv na upravljanje podjetij. Če k temu prištejemo še vse javne zavode, če k temu prištejemo javna naročila države in lokalnih skupnosti, potem vidimo, da je danes Slovenija še vedno državno regulirano gospodarstvo in da težko govorimo v pravem pomenu o odprtem, demokratičnem, svobodnem, tržnem gospodarstvu.
Ta tranzicija ni bila uspešna, nažalost.
Drage tovarišice in tovariši, drage borke in borci, praporščaki, spoštovani predsednik republike, predsednica vlade in vsi visoki gostje. Dobrodošli na našem koncertu za svobodo, za kruh.
A concert was held in April 2013 that featured anthems of the partisans of communist Yugoslavia, of Tito, and a nostalgia for a past. Major figures in Slovenian politics and its judicial system sang along, showing their true colors, while many world leaders looked on with dismay. The same political faces from the past want to resurrect a communist system that has long been thought of as dead. But they are showing their real beliefs very openly. The masks have fallen away.
Si krivi, kad smo sili u Evropa, če tudi smo vedli, da ta banda laže pa ropa. Zdaj šefi naši so največji neprijatelji, jaz pravom im banditi ali pa kar kravatari. Je banda kravatarska, a s njimi vsa Evropa ravbarska. Ker je kubinska in nariti žaluje z cihane, zato bom jaz reč rekel, kar nas doma, ki jih vzame.
Promovirajo samo tisto, kar je na nek način povezano z politično promocijo države, ki ne samo, da je že 30 let, tako rekoč nikjer ni, ampak se je SFRJ zaradi lastne, bi rekel, odsotnosti vsakega zdravega razuma, na katerem je bila zgrajena, sesula sama vase. SFRJ se je sesula sama vase. Ne? In te vrednote nekega titoizma se v slovenskih medijih promovirajo, to je že popolnoma nevzdržno. Tega nikjer ne srečate. Ne na Hrvaškem, ne v Srbiji. Ne? Recimo, zdaj prihajam ravno iz Združenih držav Amerike, en teden, ne vidiš rdeče zvezde razen na Heineken pivu. Pa še tam ima drugo vlogo. Ogromno sem v Parizu. Tam nisem rdeče zvezde nikjer videl. Najmanj, da bi bila del javnega diskurza, ki bi jo vzdrževala recimo francoska televizija kot najbolj javni medij. Tega preprosto ni. Tega ni. Ne? Pri nas so pa rdeče zvezde ne samo, da so povsod, ne samo, da slovenskih zastav ni več, ne? Da so samo še partijske zastave, recimo to je bilo na praznovanju 27.4., ne? Ampak tudi državni vrh se shaja pod temi simboli in pod temi zastavami. Predsednica vlade poje Viva comunismo e la libertà.
Vsa ta simbolika, ki si je prej omenila, v bistvu je na nek način v bistvu odraz tega, da nas nekdo hoče pač vrniti nazaj v neko preteklost, v bistvu, iz katere bi se mogli le učiti, не pa jo в бistvu zdaj ponavljати.
Це для мене це якби дивовижно. У нас уже давно ви ніде не побачите якоїсь великої кількості зображень Сталіна чи Леніна, тому що вони там для невеличкої групи пристарілих фанатиків існують. А щоб це було в таких великих кількостях, я був вражений. Більше того, мені розказали там люди, з якими я спілкувався, що Єврокомісія виділила гроші на розвиток сільського господарства, а за ці гроші влада поставила пам'ятник Брест-Тіта. Це для мене справжній шок, тому що у нас в Україні, навіть при тому, що у нас і переслідують Тимошенко, і що у нас немає демократії, у нас все-таки пам'ятники радянським вождям звалюють, руйнують їх, перейменовують вулиці, позбавляючи їх тоталітарних імен. А у вас чомусь такий якийсь культ Брест-Тіта. Я не знаю, можливо, мені ще треба більш глибоко вивчити вашу історію, щоб зрозуміти, яка така от хвороба є у частини населення, що вони так люблять соціалістичних кумирів.
Tega si pred 20 leti nismo mogli predstavljati, recimo, da se taka retrotranzicija zgodi v kulturnem smislu. Ne? In to tudi težko razumejo v Evropi. Ne?
This praise of the totalitarianism, this praise of communism, these images of Che Guevara, these attacks to what they call imperialism and capitalism, and also the very extreme anti-European tone of the concert, where a singer says that Europe, the European Union, is a gang of robbers and that we are gangsters, and the Prime Minister clapping these insults to the European Union. This is something that, frankly, it's incredible that a government of the European Union can support such injuries against the European Union. And we hope that this climate will not be in detriment of the independence of the judiciary that is now examining the case of the former Prime Minister Janša. This is really irresponsible from the part of the Slovenian government to take such stance against the Union in moments where extremism and populism is attacking the foundations of the European integration project.
The persecution of Janez Janša highlights a disturbing problem in a number of former communist countries, not limited to Slovenia. On the surface, former communist European nations have made a successful transition from communism to capitalist democracy. But how many have truly moved forward, and how many have changed only superficially? Slovenia is seen by many as a leading example of a successful transition, and the nation has much to be proud of. But unpleasant remnants of the old, dark system remain. Behind the masks of democracy, the communist philosophy and way of functioning is still very much alive. In 1996, the Council of Europe accepted Resolution number 1096. At the time, shortly after the Yugoslav wars, there was significant concern that communist powers would remain dormant until they saw the chance to regain control or disrupt the flow of democracy. Section 3 of the resolution states the dangers of a failed transition process are manifold. At best, oligarchy will reign instead of democracy, corruption instead of the rule of law, and organized crime instead of human rights. At worst, the result could be the velvet restoration of a totalitarian regime, if not a violent overthrow of the fledgling democracy. In that worst case, the new undemocratic regime of a bigger country can present also an international danger for its weaker neighbors. The key to peaceful coexistence and successful transition process lies in striking the delicate balance of providing justice without seeking revenge. Groups of individuals, masked in the guise of democracy while holding on to old privileges, haunt many of the former communist countries. They wait in the shadows and use the unjust manipulation of the judicial system as a tool for their vengeance. To a disturbing extent, the fears articulated in this resolution were justified. If such a thing can happen in Slovenia, one of the best examples of a transition country, then what might happen to other nations? This story is not just about history, and is not just about Slovenia. It is the true story of Janez Janša, a key political leader in Slovenia for almost 3 decades, who has had more than 150 different administrative and legal processes brought against him over the course of his career. We have portrayed only 3 major ones that have and will change the course of history in Slovenia. Janez Janša has been the symbolic target of all those who want to hold on to the old communist ideology and networks. Therefore, the story of the mask of democracy is a learning experience for everyone who wishes to fight for democracy. If we want to build something better tomorrow, we should call for change and not allow a story like Ukraine or Slovenia to happen.